The Acolyte episode 6 is just a few days away, and we know from the trailers at some point in the next 3 weeks, there is going to be another flashback to the witch coven on Brendok. Whether that is Qimir revealing the truth to Osha, who is now with him, or whether it's through May's perspective, which we haven't yet seen. She is very skeptical of Osha's view of the Jedi, and probably has her own memory of what went down, the truth about the fire that killed the witches. I want to explore a couple of theories. I think I've worked out how the next few episodes are going to play out. This is based on remaining frames from the trailers we haven't seen yet, and clues based on directors and writers of individual episodes. They all connect. The next flashback to Brendok is in episode 7. Kogonada is the director of both episode 3 and 7, and both were co-written by Jasmine Flournoy. The flashback episode is especially important, and did you know it's the one with the most Master Indara space trinity of the entire series? She may be dead in the present timeline, but there is something that she did on Brendok that is going to be put under the spotlight. Do you remember this scene from the first flashback in the 3rd episode? Well, just after this, as you're going to see in episode 7, Sol goes on to have a private, very significant conversation with Indara. There's also a moment in the episode where Indara has to make a very difficult decision, and she uses Force Heal. The specifics of how the scenes fit together are unknown, but get ready for more Space Trinity. And on Tuesday in episode 6, before all of that, we're going to see a chase sequence between Sol, who is now with May impersonating Osha, and in the other ship, Qimir. But when we see Brendok again, did you know there is a secret figure that appeared in the 3rd episode that very few fans noticed? Someone who could be the key to all of this. In my recent videos, I've speculated that when Osha was taken off-world, someone must have found and trained May. Qimir would have been too young. Was it a different Sith? Well, it appears as though there might have been a clue in episode 3 Destiny that we all missed. A secret figure in the corner of one frame who seems to vanish when the Jedi show up. At first I thought it was the old alien lady, but it's not. This is someone who is not with the other witches. Joining me to discuss this fascinating wild acolyte theory is Risman, a good friend of the channel.
Yeah, very interesting. So I think it's probably, if I had to guess, and it's not a witch, let's just put that out there. I don't think it would be Qimir. My vote might be on whoever the master is, right? Because I think we've aligned pretty clearly, I'm on your page. If Qimir is a Sith, that he would be the apprentice, right? So somewhere, someplace, there's a master overseeing things. To me, this could be who that is.
Do you think the mothers have something to do with the Sith? Or is this going to be a different figure like Tenebrous?
I think there's a relationship here. What I think I like the best to try and tie the story together with other things that we know from the lore, since we're here and we kind of have to do that now. I'd love for there to be some sort of a learning relationship with these witches and how they use the Force and what the Sith were trying to do at this time and how they might have influenced each other, work together in some way to sort of explore, alternate Force uses other than what the Jedi were sort of obligating as the right way to use the Force. To me, that would be kind of cool.
So how do you think the series is going to play out? Is Qimir the big bad? Is there another Sith? And how do you think this all comes together? Because there is still the mystery of who took May off Brendok.
Now we're presented with a situation where it appears that the bad one is in a position to actually infiltrate the Jedi, right? There was this whole notion of somebody, maybe it was Daphne Keane or other people saying, we're going to see an infiltration here of the Jedi. And up to this point, I'm like, well, who is it? Well, now it could be this whole May switcheroo. It could also be that this was someone's grand design from the beginning, right? To swap these two around or to try and change their minds. I see people equating it to like the Parent Trap and other things when she cut her hair off and now who knows who's who, even though one has a big tattoo on the forehead and the other one doesn't. My personal opinion is I don't think we're going to see another big bad other than Qimir. And I was just reading an article that makes it sound like if there's a season 2, Qamir's story is due to be, I'm calling him Qimir, right? He's known as the Stranger now, I guess, officially. That the Stranger's story is due to be explored in further detail if there is a season 2. So I extrapolate from that he survives.
which makes the original leak by Bespin Bulletin even more valid. You know, they were saying the final scene, the final big battle of the show, is between Osha and Sol, not Qimir. Right from the word go, I thought Osha is going to be the Acolyte, not May. She has too much sympathy. You know, she was looking at the kid in the first episode behind the bar, and that kid was the reason she didn't go for the dad.
So the one thing that's still on my mind is the one actor who has the gravitas, David
Howard.
Who we've yet to encounter, right? Who everyone speculated, that sounds like, his voice and the way he could present himself could be a Sith, right? Could be a Sith master. So there's a part of me that would love to see him presented in some way like that. And I guess if they're going to try and tie it together, it would have to be Tenebrous. But there's another part of me that says some things they've been doing in the series are maybe a little, maybe I'll be kind here, a little fast and loose with the lore and some of the ways in which I know they're depicting the Jedi and even the Sith to an extent, and just some of the dialogue choices and some of the rest of it where I'm kind of like, I almost don't want them to touch Tenebrous, right? I don't really want them to, go the Plagueis route, just because I feel like it changes the discussion around the series more around, well, can you believe what they did with so-and-so, or how they did with what and what, rather than trying to judge the series on its own merit, which for me, it hasn't been a great series, candidly, but I feel like a lot of this other conversation around what came before gets mixed in, you know what I mean, into the broader conversation, and it almost doesn't become about the series at all, right? It becomes about the treatment of things that came before that they've already told us they're not going by.
I don't know if you remember the very first leaks for the show, and look, I'm talking going all the way back to 2021 or 2022. There were 2 accounts which have now vanished from the face of the earth, and they had leaks, many of which did come true. They talked about the twins, and they spoke about an ice planet, and they said by the end of the series, there is a mystery big bad of sorts, and we kind of extrapolated, they were talking about Plagueis. Whether he's at a different age to Legends, he's meant to be a kid, but now he's a full adult, they've aged him up. There was that leaked description of a scene, where by the edge of a body of water, very horror style, there's a hooded figure. And that, I think to them, was going to be Plagueis. I would say the frustrating thing for me is the wasted potential. This is a show that is meant to be about the Sith, and there has been very little Sith lore. Not to mention, they market the show to be a precursor to The Phantom Menace, so on some level you have to assume the master of Palpatine. Whether they do this in season 2 or season 3, we don't know how many seasons this show is really going to be. We're looking at a Sith lineage, and this isn't just me speculating, Leslye Headland even said so. I know it's Legends, but how would you feel if they decided to throw the Plagueis Tenebrous thing out the window, and bam, you've got a brand new Sith lineage that leads to Palpatine? Does that alter your perspective?
I think the series is going to end with Qimir and or his master, if presented to us, going back into hiding to sort of try and preserve the letter of the Sith hasn't been seen. Again, even though I feel like they've been stepping all over that in how they've been approaching it, at least up to this point. So while I'm with you, I want to see some connectivity there. I would have to believe, and even again, in the last article I was just reading, Leslye was talking about what she had in mind for season 2. I think this series was conceived as a multi-season series. So I'm afraid for that reason, they won't connect all of the dots in this season, other than maybe, again, dealing with how we do or don't have Jedi that are still around that experienced any of this firsthand, and what is the disposition of Qimir and or any other Sith or Sith adjacent things that we've seen in the series at the very end, so that story could be continued in a way that's interesting but doesn't close the loop, you know what I mean, right away.
It seems to me that Leslye wanted season 1 to be all-encompassing, because she talks about you're not guaranteed a second season as a showrunner. So I hope there is something, even just a tease of the Grand Master. And you've got to expect someone like David Howard to fill that role. You wouldn't have someone with his presence and his voice to just be, what Christopher Lloyd was in Mando season 3.
Oh, don't remind me. Don't remind me of...
It's true though.